A man pulls a snapped rivet out of its hole and shows it to his crew leader. The crew leader calls down the foreman. The foreman looks at the rivet, says he has seen worse, and climbs back up. Less than 10 minutes later, 19,000 tons of steel fall into the river with 86 men on top. The worst part of this story is not that nobody saw it coming. It is that everyone had seen it. And that the warning got lost from hand to hand. Outside Quebec City, at the turn of the century, they are building the biggest bridge in the world. It is going to fall. They will rebuild it, and it is going to fall a second time. Close to 90 dead in all. But the question of this film is not how a bridge collapses, the steel will answer that in 15 seconds. The question is this one: how do you let a bridge fall when it has been warning you for 23 days? And the answer comes down to 3 men. A politician who wears 3 hats at the same time, and who needs this bridge to save his city. A famous engineer who calculates everything, from very far away, and who will never come. And a Mohawk ironworker who climbs into it every morning. The first one signs. The second one telegraphs. The third one falls. His name is Alexander Beauvais. To understand, you have to see Quebec City as it really was at that moment. Not the postcard, a city that had just lost. 50 years earlier, it was one of the great ports of America, the timber of the empire, hundreds of sailing ships built in the coves on both shores. Then steel replaced wood, and the river was dredged all the way up to Montreal. From then on, the ocean liners steam right past Quebec without stopping. The shipyards close. The carpenters move away. The railways that run from one ocean to the other all run through Montreal. In 1901, Montreal is almost 4 times bigger, and it has had its bridge over the river for 40 years. Quebec, in winter, still crosses the way it did in the 1600s, men hauling canoes over the ice, by hand. So when someone promises the city a bridge, it is not an engineer's whim, it is a resurrection. And the man making the promise is this man. Simon Napoleon Parent. President of the Quebec Bridge Company. At the same time, Mayor of Quebec City. At the same time, Premier of the province. And a director of Le Soleil, the city's great newspaper, the very one that will tell its readers the story of the bridge. The man running the project is also the man voting the subsidies, and the man controlling what gets said about it. Opponents will accuse him of getting rich off the public purse. A committee will clear him. Nothing will ever be proven. But one fact remains, and this fact is going to kill: the bridge company is poor. So poor that a Pennsylvania steel works offers to draw the plans for free, on condition that it gets the contract. Free plans, for the biggest bridge in the world. The most expensive gift in this story. For the signature, they go to New York. Theodore Cooper is probably the most respected engineer in America. His loading standards are used across the whole continent. He is past 60, he is alone, he is ill, and he sees in Quebec the crowning work of his life. And the problem they hand him is magnificent. In Montreal, the river is wide but shallow, you could plant 24 piers, one after another. Here, none of that. Nearly a kilometer of water, 60 meters deep in places, a tidal current, and ice pushing all winter long. A pier in the middle of the channel. Impossible. Cables, like a suspension bridge. Too soft, a train would ride through it like a hammock. There is only one answer left in the world: the cantilever. 2 rigid arms of steel reaching out from each shore, balanced over the void, until they meet in the middle. Scotland has just built a legendary one. Quebec will build bigger. His first move is to stretch the main span, from 1,600 to 1,800 feet. The official reason is solid: piers closer to the shores, in shallower water, built faster, less exposed to the ice. The unspoken reason is simpler: 1,800 feet is the world record, snatched away from Scotland. Except that stretching a bridge means thousands of tons of extra steel. And the calculation of the bridge's own weight, that number will never be redone. Not once. Not in 7 years. Second move: when Ottawa suggests having the calculations checked by an independent engineer, Cooper takes it as an insult.
This puts me in the position of a subordinate, which I cannot accept. Theodore Cooper.
The government backs down. Nobody contradicts the greatest engineer in America. And Cooper himself will not come. Once the steel erection begins, he is never seen on the site again, too old, too ill, too far. He follows the biggest bridge in the world on paper, from Manhattan. On site, the chief engineer has never built a bridge anywhere near this size. That is the system. The least experienced man sees the bridge. The most powerful man never sees it. And nobody counts the numbers again. Meanwhile, out on the river, men are climbing into it. The third man signs nothing and calculates nothing, he climbs. Alexander Beauvais leads a riveting gang. He comes from Kahnawake, a Mohawk village on the St. Lawrence, right across from Montreal. Since the great bridges of the 1800s, and above all since 1886, when the Canadian Pacific Bridge landed on the reserve, the men of Kahnawake have learned this trade, passed it down, and become the most sought-after iron workers on the continent. Not because they feel no fear of heights, that is a legend other people wrote for them. Because they were good, trained by their own, and proud of it. In 1907, there are about 70 iron workers in that village. 38 of them are on the Quebec Bridge. Almost half the village climbs into the same steel. A riveting gang is 4 men. One heats the rivet red hot and throws it, one catches it in midair, one holds it, one strikes. Hundreds of feet above the river. No net, no harness, no nothing. The other men on the site come from the villages across the water, Saint-Romuald, New Liverpool. In the Hardy family alone, 4 men work on the bridge. And all the beauty of this work site, all its horror, too, lies in its method. The rear arm is anchored into the rock and holds everything, the front arm reaches out over the void, piece by piece, in balance, with nothing underneath. By the summer of 1907, 600 feet of steel already float above the river, held up by the calculations of a man who has never come to see them. And in early August, those calculations start to answer back. On August 6, 1907, Inspector Norman McClure, 26 years old, Cooper's man on the site, writes to New York, cords in the anchor arm are bent out of shape. They are bending. Cooper's reply is 1 line long.
How did that happen?
Nobody knows. And that is where the 23 days begin. For 3 weeks, they measure. They write. New York writes back. And they keep loading the bridge. On August 27th, McClure picks up his pen again. That letter survived, it is reproduced in the official report. Here it is.
Their present shape is without doubt caused by the stresses they are under at this moment. A little over a week ago, I measured 1 rib of cord 9L of the anchor arm, it was 3/4 of an inch out of line. Today, it is 2 1/4 inches. Norman McClure, August 27, 1907.
3/4 of an inch, then 2 1/4 inches, in a week and a half. That is not a hesitation, it is an acceleration. And McClure adds the heaviest sentence in the whole letter, the riveting gangs working at those spots had noticed it, and had reported it themselves. The men who were about to die on it had watched the steel bend with their own eyes. First pair of hands, the workers. The warning moves on. On the morning of August 29th, McClure boards the train for New York, he is going to see Cooper in person. Second pair of hands. The warning moves on again, but it leaves the site, and it travels at the speed of a train. Behind him, nothing stops. 19,000 tons of steel over the river, dozens of men on it, and cords bending before your eyes. Late in the afternoon, inside one of those cords, Alexander Beauvais and his gang are driving rivets. 2 rivets he has just driven snap clean. His teammate, John Norton, pulls one out of the hole and shows it to him, broken almost through the middle. Beauvais calls down the riveting foreman, Meredith, 26 years old as well. Meredith examines it, says he has seen worse ones, and climbs back up. Third pair of hands. And this time, the warning stops. In New York, Cooper receives McClure. He understands in a few minutes what the site refused to understand in 3 weeks. He wires the Pennsylvania Works immediately. That telegram still exists.
Add no more load to bridge till after due consideration of facts. McClure will be with you at 5 o'clock. Theodore Cooper.
The message reaches Phoenixville at 1:15. It is clear, it is signed by the greatest engineer in America, and it arrives in time. Fourth pair of hands. And then, nothing happens. Because Phoenixville is not Quebec, It is the company's head office, 750 kilometers from the river. Nobody wires the site. McClure had promised to cable Cooper's decision to the inspector on the spot, immediately. The official report notes, in a single line, that he did not. So the Pennsylvania engineers wait for McClure, as the telegram says. They meet. They talk. And they decide to wait until the next morning to make the call. The Royal Commission's report later wrote a sentence that nobody has ever managed to improve.
This decision was reached almost at the moment the bridge fell.
So let us recap, because this is the whole film. The workers saw it, and they said so. The inspector measured it, and he wrote it down. The engineer understood, and he telegraphed. The telegram arrived. Every person in that chain did more or less their part, except that nobody, absolutely nobody, did the last 50 feet, telling the men who were on it to come down. On the site, on this late afternoon of August 29th, nobody knows anything. The shift ends in 20 minutes. 5:30 in the afternoon. Timekeeper Hugh O is about to blow the whistle to end the day. A group of onlookers has just stepped off the deck. What follows lasted less than 15 seconds, the Royal Commission established that, by timing one man's run. There is no photograph of those 15 seconds. No film. No image anywhere in the world. So we are going to give them to you anyway.
The portal posts seemed to sink, as if they had been pillars of ice whose ends were melting away at high speed. E. R. Kinloch, Inspector, testimony before the Commission.
19,000 tons of steel in the river. 86 men at work, 11 come out alive. Timekeeper Hugh O ran flat out across nearly 100 yards of deck while the bridge opened up behind him, and he made it. It is his run that made it possible to measure the 15 seconds. Men working on the ground, under the anchor arm, were crushed by the falling structure. The report notes that 50 feet away, they would have been safe. And Alexander Beauvais falls inside his cord. He grips the plate, arms and legs. The cord hits the ground and stays planted upright, 3 or 4 feet in the air, with him inside. A broken leg. A broken nose. Alive. His 2 teammates, no. The tide was low. It rises. Injured men trapped in the steel drown while rescuers try to cut them free, a few feet from people who can hear them. On the shore, men, women, and children listen. A Montreal newspaper will write, 2 days later, that no pen will ever be able to describe it. 75 dead according to the Royal Commission. 76 according to the federal plaque and popular memory. The disagreement lasts to this day, and it is not a detail. There is a family behind every single number. On the south shore, the one parish of Saint-Romuald loses 15 men. In the Hardy family, all 4 are dead. The parish priest opens his register and writes,
"The south part of the Quebec Bridge, under construction, collapsed. 75 men were killed, 15 of them from this parish. Register of the parish of Saint-Romuald, September 1st, 1907.
In Kahnawake, that evening, nobody knows anything yet. The village has a single telephone, at the post office. It rings at 6:30, 53 minutes after the fall. The postmaster walks out into the street with the news. 38 men from the village were on that bridge. 33 are dead. The next morning, 30 villagers set out for the site. Only 8 bodies will come home. The village owns just 2 hearses, it borrows more from neighboring communities, and the last coffins are carried by hand to the church, past a crowd that cannot fit inside. What comes next is what the women decided. First a crucifix, hung behind the main altar. Then this, reported by a writer in 1949.
Then they got behind the men and made them scatter. They did not want all the gangs working together on one bridge any longer. If something went wrong, half the young women on the reservation could be widowed at once." Joseph Mitchell, 1949.
Never again all the men on the same job. It is an engineering decision, made by women in mourning, and it is probably the smartest decision in this whole story. It did not pull Kahnawake away from steel, the opposite. It sent it everywhere, Buffalo, Detroit, Cleveland, then the skyscrapers of New York. They never stopped climbing. They stopped climbing altogether. The country wants answers right away. A royal commission is named within days, 3 engineers, Holgate, Carey, Galbraith. In New York, Theodore Cooper is questioned for days. And on September 17, the commission does something rare. It moves its hearing to the hospital in Levy, to the bedside of Alexander Beauvais. The 3 commissioners stand around the bed. He is asked who led the other riveting gang. His answer is in the transcript, word for word.
Do you remember who was leading that gang? Napoleon Lahatch. Are they alive? They are all gone. A grave error was made. The dead load used in the calculations was too low. This erroneous assumption was made by Mr. Schlapke and accepted by Mr. Cooper. Report of the Royal Commission, 1908.
There it is. 6 months of inquiry, and the verdict fits in one line: the starting number was wrong. The weight of the bridge itself. Calculated by Peter Schlapke, the designer at the works that had offered the free plans. Accepted by Theodore Cooper, who was never there to check it again. Never recalculated after the enlargement. 2 men named, 2 men blamed, and prosecuted, no one. The families receive what they were owed, 15 days of wages. A year later, the American company pays $100,000, in total, for the victims' minor children. The bridge itself will end up costing around $23 million. 3 years after the fall, the widow of Thomas Deere, ill, is still pleading for her son George's $300 allowance. The child is 3 years old. And Simon Napoleon parent? He is not named in the report. Not once. A financial arrangement is not an engineering fault, so it is nobody's fault. Ottawa had already made him chairman of the Transcontinental Railway Commission. The men of the bridge now ran the railway the bridge was meant to carry. The private company is finished. The federal government takes the bridge over and rebuilds it its own way. And this time, everything is checked, all the time, by everyone. A board of engineers cross-checked calculations, nickel steel, stronger, at a scale almost nobody had ever dared. The new bridge holds 2.5 times more steel than the old one, for the same span. A single suspension link weighs 145 tons. And the final plan is spectacular. The center span, 5,000 tons, is built separately in a cove downstream, then floated out on the water, between the 2 arms, and jacked up vertically. On September 11, 1916, the weather is perfect. Tens of thousands of people cover both shores. In the crowd, there is the Premier of Quebec, and Wilfrid Laurier, the men whose dream this bridge is. At 10:50, the span hangs above the water. And a cast piece breaks, under the southwest corner. And this time, the cameras are there. What you are watching is the Path newsreel of 1916. The 2 arms of the bridge, empty. The water below, which has just closed over 5,000 tons of new steel. 13 dead. About 10 of them will never be found. The visiting engineers from around the world had been standing on the span during the lift. At the break, they had gone ashore. The ones who stayed on it were the workers. The war is on, people whisper about German sabotage. The inquiry rules it out within weeks. A cast piece under a bearing, nothing more. But something has changed since 1907, and it may be the only good news in this whole film. 2 days after the fall, the company publicly takes full responsibility, and orders a new span. In 1907, it took 6 months of inquiry to name a negligence of 23 days. In 1916, it took 2 days to own up to a broken casting. A year later, they do it again. Same river, same method, with a redesigned bearing, so that the piece that broke no longer exists. On September 17, 1917, at dawn, the new span leaves its cradle in the cove at Sillery. 7 tugboats. 3 days of jacking. 75 lifts of 2 feet each. On September 20th, at 3:25, they begin driving the 8 pins that will wed the span to the 2 arms, and every blow of rail on steel can be heard from one shore to the other. The technical press told the ending.
And when, at 4 o'clock, the last foreman raised the cry, "Right, here," all restraint was lost, among workmen and spectators alike. The crane whistles took up the cheers, the boats carried them to the city, and every bell, every whistle, every horn broke loose. Quebec understood that its 30-year dream had just come true. Engineering News Record, 1917.
Up on the structure, a worker steps out onto a narrow piece of steel over the void, and starts dancing a jig. On October 17th, a first train crosses the river. 30 years of dreaming, 2 collapses, 88 men. The bridge holds. It still holds today. On August 22, 1919, the Prince of Wales comes to officially inaugurate the biggest bridge in the world. Those images survive too. The prince walks the deck, the crowd follows, the city rings. This time, nobody is knighted, unlike Scotland 30 years earlier. The second bridge was a team effort, and there is no one left who wants a great name at the bottom of the page. Theodore Cooper is not there. Nothing, anywhere in the record, brings him to any of the openings of his bridge. He dies in New York 2 days after the ceremony. 80 years old. Alone. The man who signed the biggest bridge in the world probably never saw it standing with his own eyes. And Alexander Beauvais. He went back into the steel. He became a superintendent at Dominion Bridge, the company that had hired the first man from his village, 30 years earlier. And he did one thing worth stopping on for a second. The company gave him the steel, and he raised, with his own hands, a great 6-meter cross at each entrance to Kahnawake, then the steel gateway of the cemetery where his teammates lie. The man who fell with the bridge spent the rest of his life raising steel upright above his dead. In that cemetery, the graves of the men killed on the job carry no stone, they carry crosses made of beams. A visiting writer wrote, in 1949, that there was a forest of steel crosses in there. They are still looked after. The lights on them are still changed, one for each man. There is one last object in this story. In Canada, engineers wear an iron ring on the little finger, given since 1925 in a private ceremony. Legend says the first rings were forged from the steel of the Quebec Bridge. It is not true. Nothing establishes it. But if the legend attached itself to this bridge rather than another, that is no accident. The ring is worn on the hand that draws, and it drags on the paper with every line. The bridge, for its part, is still there. More than a century later, it is still the longest cantilever span in the world. Below it, under 60 meters of water, the span of 1916 was never raised. And on the shore, at low tide, you can still see the steel of 1907 breaking the surface. So, the question from the beginning, how do you let a bridge fall when it has been warning you for 23 days? The answer is not in Schlapke's calculations, nor in Cooper's pride, nor in Parent's 3 hats. It is in a telegram that was never written. Just one. From Phoenixville to the bridge, on a Thursday afternoon in 1907. It would have taken 1 minute. This film is made of real archives, the report and the sworn testimony of the Royal Commission of 1908, the investigation photographs and the lifting album, kept at Library and Archives Canada, the newspapers of the day, digitized by Quebec's National Library, the Path and Canadian newsreels. What you should know, the archival images were restored and colorized by artificial intelligence. The colors are interpretations, not facts. The voice you have been hearing for 20 minutes is a synthetic voice. The animated diagrams are modern reconstructions, marked as such. The contested numbers stayed contested, 75 or 76 dead, where the sources disagree, we told you so. The section devoted to Kahnawake is submitted to the community's cultural center for review before publication. And every source, one by one, is in the description.